Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small businesses and good stories in general. Welcome to today's episode of Small Business War Stories. And today's a good one. Today's number 129 with Erika Nichols of the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. And if you're a fan of music at all, or if you're into the television show Nashville, you might have heard of the Bluebird Cafe as a mecca for songwriters. And songwriting is really the engine that moves the Nashville music industry. And the Bluebird Cafe is an iconic place where people gather to share their songs. Erika started there as a waitress in the early 80s, and now she runs the place. And it hasn't been always easy. So they were basically right on the line of insolvency for a long time. And then the show Nashville really buoyed them up, and now they make a lot of their money on merchandise sales. So definitely a lot of really cool stories, a lot of celebrities and different connections to people that make the Nashville songwriting community what it is. So don't miss this one. It's a good one. This episode is brought to you by Gusto. That's Gusto. And Gusto is a great way to handle all the things in your small business that are a pain. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. So things like payroll. And things like handling your bookkeeping, your taxes, they help you with that. So the great thing about that is, benefit management and all those things. As you start to grow and get more employees, that is not the reason you started your business. You started your business to pursue your passion and your dream. So check them out. It's Gusto. That's Gusto.com/war stories. WARSTORIES. And check them out. Once you run your first payroll, you get 3 free months. And you're better, we're better, they're better, everybody's better. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Erika Nichols at the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are live here in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. And we are recording on location at the Bluebird Cafe next to the famous neon sign. And I'm here with Erika Nichols. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is so cool to be here. This is an iconic Nashville location, a home for songwriters all over the land who come here. Tell me a little bit more. How did this get started? How did this quaint cafe in a strip mall in Nashville end up being this iconic place for songwriters?
I think it was a lot of synchronicity. The Bluebird started in 1982, and our founder, Amy Kurland, decided to get a little place where she could have a cafe. She really just wanted a very straightforward cafe, and found this place in a strip mall. It was a game room, and it had been a drugstore before that. And she decided to, fix it up. This is all the roof and everything that you see here is from the drugstore.
Is that right?
Yeah. So she had lunches and dinners, fancy tablecloths and specials and things. And then she had a boyfriend who played guitar, who suggested that maybe she put a stage in, and he would bring his friends.
So the original intent wasn't for it to be where it is today.
No,
it's like in Bob Ross's word, a happy little accident.
True. Yes.
So it opened in 1982, and then how long was it until it became like you start seeing live music all the time?
Well, within the first couple years, music started to happen around here.
Yep.
And I started here as a waitress in 1984.
Wow.
When I was in college, at Belmont. And I was a lunch waitress.
Okay.
So at the time, there were 3 different crews of people that would work here, and it really became stressful because there were so many people that were working here in a variety of situations.
Sure.
So Amy and me, we were both taking marketing classes in school.
Yep.
And we came up with this idea, would people come to an early music show instead of just a late show after the dinner hour was done,
Yeah.
would they come and eat during the early show and have some music? And so we did a survey, and I did my whole class work on with the Bluebird, how to market it.
So this was your school
Well,
project?
Partially.
Yeah.
It was my project, but Amy had a project too, so we kind of were aligned. And we were roommates at the time, and so we were both very interested in seeing how this could develop. And the survey said yes, and so she stopped serving lunches and just kind of focused on the evening and the music. And by that point in time, there were a lot of songwriters involved.
That's cool. And so this is in the mid to late 80s now?
Yeah.
So you went from being a waitress here in college to now running the show here.
That's right. But I had other jobs in between.
You had other jobs in between. Oh, so you came back.
I came back.
Okay. So what tell me about that. So what made you step away and what made you come back?
Well, I was a philosophy major
Okay.
at Belmont, so I wasn't in the music business at
Yeah.
all and didn't intend to be. And I went home to Massachusetts after I left Belmont, after I graduated.
Yeah.
And Amy convinced me to come back and take a job working on a music festival here in town that needed some help over the last couple months,
Yeah.
which I did. And then I deferred my graduate school admission 2 years while I was booking this big festival. And then
Yeah.
finally I was like, guess what? I'm not going to be studying Heidegger anymore.
Yeah, so you got pulled into the music. You know
Yes.
the Hunter S. Thompson quote about the music business?
Tell me that.
Oh God, I'm gonna butcher it. By paraphrasing. It's like a like dark dungeon like full of like shady characters, and there's also a bad part.
Yeah, I think I have.
I completely butchered that, but yeah, I got the spirit of it.
Yes, indeed.
So, this is a fascinating case study for me as somebody who's interviewed so many small business owners, because I feel like there's a lot that people can learn from you, and it's also impossible for anybody to really replicate this, right? Because there's like the right mix of like timing and the right mix of people and the right mix of the choices you end up making, where Nashville was at that point versus
Right.
where it is today. But what are some of the things that you think that you guys did right along the way that helped you get to where you are today? And we'll talk a little bit more about the kind of big step up in popularity for the place
Right.
with the TV show. But even before that, right?
I think it was really the intention that Amy set to focus on songwriters and original music. And at the time, there weren't songwriter venues. Now
Right.
they're everywhere. But I think the Bluebird was really a catalyst for that.
Yeah.
And because Nashville is the home
Yeah.
of songwriters, it really became a place that was very dear to the writers' hearts.
Yep.
And that opportunity for them to be heard, where the room was really, it's so small, you almost have to be quiet. If you have a loud voice in this room, it's so
Yeah.
very apparent.
Well, but you guys are also not shy about
We're not shy about it.
asking people. There's multiple signs. You even sell a decal in the shape of a guitar that says "shh" inside of it.
And
right?
the back of the T-shirt, just do.
There you go. So I was going to ask you about that in a minute here, about the importance of silence and all that. But so you're talking about like the importance of the intention that was set with the place initially, and you
Yes.
think that has a lot to do with it.
I think it has a lot to do with creating the allegiance of the songwriting community,
Yeah.
which is what makes the Bluebird different.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of wonderful venues that present songwriters. The Bluebird started as a place where people kind of developed their career in a different way than people develop their careers now. So when there were the auditions, and we still do auditions 4 times a year for our Sunday Writers' Night,
Mm-hmm.
but those auditions, Garth Brooks played those auditions, and Keith Urban and Kenny Chesney. All of those people came to town and did these auditions, and when you pass the audition, you kind of work your way through
Mhm.
a process. So instead of just like being presented, you are interwoven almost with
Mhm.
what the Bluebird does. And we have people, Kelsey Ballerini stood in line to play open mic. People who have come through the very, very beginnings of their career here at the Bluebird.
Yeah.
And that, I think that support and that, like I say, allegiance is something that has been built over a long period of time.
And it's a special venue. I got to play here last night. It was really, really cool. To share, and you don't allow, so one of the big things, and this is kind of implied in everything you've been saying, but you do not allow people to play covers.
Correct.
So everything has to be your own original composition, and that's what at the heart of this whole, focus on songwriting.
That is true. And then people in this room, and you know from experience, you stand on this little stage or you're in the center of the room, and it's like you're exposed. And I think that creates a very supportive audience. I'm sure you felt it last night and saw it. I mean, there are people up on stage that have played their very first time on stage, and the audience is as warm and supportive as they are of Tony Arata, who wrote the dance for Garth Brooks. So I think there's something about the community building spirit of this room that that sort of maintains.
Yeah. And so how do people react to this whole idea of because I'm used to in the music community, to listening rooms. There's a place like the Cactus Cafe in Austin, or the Old Quarter Acoustic Cafe, which is currently in Galveston, used to be in Houston, which are listening rooms by design, right? And there's many more. But not everybody in the public is used to that, right? A lot of people are used to going to see music, or maybe like music is almost like the background thing during happy hour, and you're catching up with your friends, and you're doing shots of whiskey or having a glass of wine. How do people react to that? And how do you feel like there's a role that you have as a educating and bringing people into this fold with what you do here?
I really do think that it's an education process in a lot of ways, and I would say the inception of our presence in Nashville, the television show, was really very, very apparent, that kind of educational process, because before Nashville was on the air, we had lots of fans, and they all understood what the Bluebird did and who we were. Then Nashville happened, and we became a celebrity. And people didn't know. They'd come in and they'd be like, whoa, I just want to eat breakfast here, or how come I can't just sit down and have a beer and then take off? And it's like, nope, this is what, when you come in, you're in. And you're in for the duration. And this is sort of what you do. I mean, you're sitting next to somebody who's putting their drink on your table, and you're conversing with the songwriters, and you're right there. So, if you're eating a sandwich, you're like right there eating a sandwich. And I think in that way, we became an educational place for the people that saw us one way that was on television.
So tell me more about, you brought up Nashville. When was that? What year was that?
2010.
2010. So it's been almost a decade. Tell me more about how did that first, what was the gestation
of that? Or was it 2012?
Is that right? Well, okay, it's been more than 5 years. Let's just say that.
Thank you.
We'll settle in.
7 seasons.
The precisions of them and the mathematics are not that important on that one. But how did that happen? Like what?
A gentleman called Steve Buchanan, who used to work at the Grand Ole Opry, ran the Grand Ole Opry. He and I had known each other for years, and he called me. He's like, I'm working on a television show, and what do you think about the Bluebird being in this television show? And there was no budget. It was strictly, we got to be in the show, and it was at a period of time when I had just taken over the Bluebird, and we weren't really making money. Our budget was very flat, because with 90 seats that you seat twice, and all the door money goes to the songwriter. So we make our money on food and beverage merchandise sales. So it was pretty, we're like keeping it going, but it wasn't easy. And when Steve offered that opportunity, I thought, well, I can make something of this. I can make this make some money for us. And that was great, and it did. And our merchandise is really what keeps our doors open still.
Is that right? So most of and a lot of it's because people visit Nashville. They come here, and do people buy things even when they don't come here? Like they just, meaning they just like walk in the door and it's like, I want a t-shirt?
Well, we're not open all the time, but whenever we're around, people will bang on the door and try to get in, and stuff like that. And we sell the majority, 99.9% of our merchandise revenue comes out this door of this tiny place. So we've been very fortunate, and we try and uphold like great merchandise and a welcoming spirit to people that do that. So in that way, it was a real blessing to have that happen for us.
And then, so how many seasons? Because that's changed, right?
It was 7 seasons.
It was 7 seasons? And at some point, did people actually record here, or did
they recorded the pilot here? So we did for the first They didn't even know the show was going to be sold. Lionsgate was here. They closed off the entire strip mall, bought out the entire strip mall front and back, paid every business out for 5 days, and shot the pilot, and completely, had to pipe in air conditioning. And the producers were all very like, "Wait, what? We're filming here." It was funny. And then once the show got picked up, they built an exact replica.
Okay.
I mean, exact replica.
Is that right?
They spent 3 weeks in here measuring, taking color samples. They took every one of those photographs, headshots off the wall, and scanned them and then put them on the wall in the exact same way that they're here. They had inlay on our bar, the WD-40. They took our old tablecloths and broom and got us new ones. But when I got to go and play myself on the TV show, and that was another thing, not only the exact replica, but several of our staff were in the show.
Yeah.
And it was an intention that Callie Corey and the team had, that they wanted this to be about Nashville, not a Hollywood version of Nashville. So they had lots of local people that would be in and would really kind of, people would be watching, be like, "I saw you last night."
Yeah.
And so it became something that, instead of dividing the city, it became very cohesive for the city, and something, a point of pride, even though it has given us a lot of traffic.
Okay. Oh, so do people in the neighborhood like that, or is it sometimes it's a mixed feelings?
It was a real challenge in the beginning for us and our neighbors, being in a strip mall. In the beginning, there were a couple days that we didn't take reservations, Sundays and Mondays. And when that was happening, people would line up for the open mic night, and we would draw names. So there would be 200 people outside the door, and they would be spilling out into the street, into Hillsborough Pike, and you couldn't stop them. They would not get out of line.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "You can't manage these folks," and we're like, "No, we can't,"
Yeah.
because they're not agreeing to be managed.
Yeah.
And so we had to change some of our systems and have more reservations.
And now your system, you want to share that the open mic system is you have to, or the right.
Instead of having just drawing names and the first 25 people getting to play, we had to do a call-in, which I don't particularly love, because it means that you really have to plan ahead. And if you're new from out of town and just driving in on the bus, it was always a thing that you could just show up and potentially play. And so we've lost that kind of, immediacy.
Yeah.
So now it's a call-in system where you have to call in at 11 o'clock on a Monday.
And it's kind of like, it's almost like calling a radio, like when the radio's like, caller 9 gets free tickets. And then
it is kind of like that. People cry.
Yeah.
when
they get through? And probably they cry when they don't get through. You just don't get to hear it.
True. But we have one little flip phone that we use, and we turn it on right for the call-in and turn it off right afterwards, because we can't take voicemail or anything. It's just like, either you get through or you don't get through.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And we take a quick break here in the conversation with Erika to do a quick mention of our sponsor, Gusto. Gusto, they help us keep the lights on for the podcast. It's at gusto.com. And they are a great solution. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it was a great solution for small businesses to take care of things like payroll and benefits and things that are a pain to deal with as a small business as you grow. So if it's just you, this may not be right. But if you have maybe even just a couple of employees and you have to start running different aspects of your business, they can help you with that and help you focus on really the reasons why you started your business, which I've never, in 130 episodes I've done, I've never ever talked to somebody that they started a business, who said they started a business to do payroll and benefits. Maybe that's you, and don't go to Gusto in that case. But if that's not you, go to Gusto, gusto.com/war stories, and you can sign up. And once you sign up and run your first payroll, you get 3 free months. And let's get back to our conversation with Erika.
So you and I met originally at South by Southwest.
Correct.
In Austin, Texas. And that was because for last year's festival, this year's festival, there was a premiere of a documentary about this place.
Yes.
So tell me more about that. How did that come about? When did that become an idea, and how did that come together?
Well, I've been running the Bluebird for 12 years, and when I started, I said I'd do it for a year,
Yeah, there you go.
And then I said I would do it until we could make a documentary. And so it was something that I really wanted to do. There were people that I wanted to make sure we'd gotten on film, and the experience, because I think the experience, even in light of the television show, a little bit more push because of that, because I really want people to see what this is, because people walk out of this room and they're changed. Mm-hmm. And they will say, I've never heard music like this. So it's like, okay, how do we capture that on film and tell people the real story? Mm-hmm. So we went through, I had a couple different people that I had solicited to do some tests. And it just never worked out because it's very expensive to make a movie, come to find out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the folks, the company that I worked with, Riverside Productions, I knew the two guys because they worked for ABC Digital. Mm-hmm. And so they had been in L.A., they moved to Nashville to open a business, and we ran into each other in London at Country to Country and had dinner, and I was like, I want to make this movie. And they're like, we'll do it. And so it just kind of evolved that we did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that premiered, and what's the status of that today? Where is it? Can people stream that, watch it? Is it still screening? What's going on with it?
Well, we have just signed a distribution deal.
Oh, congratulations.
For it. Yes, thank you. And we're going to have a New York, LA, and a Nashville premiere this fall.
Okay.
And then
Austin.
We've been in Austin.
Yeah, I know, but that was South by Southwest.
Perhaps we'll come back. Yeah. But hopefully then it will become streaming accessible in the fall, late fall.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very exciting. Now all we have to do is get the music paid for.
Yeah.
So
I remember that. So you were kind enough to hook us up with tickets to go see that in Austin. And I remember that one of the moments where I was like, my jaw just dropped, is one of the songwriters who was here on stage. I think it was Friends in Low Places or something. No, it was one of the
Dirt on My Boots.
It was some song that was like major song by I think Garth Brooks made it major.
Oh, he in the film he performs the dance.
Okay,
with Tony Arata who wrote it.
Yeah, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like everybody's like, oh my God, like what? And these are the people that actually made people's experiences.
Yes, and when you see Garth in the film, I mean, Garth is always like that. I mean, he'll pull his truck up in front, put his guitar over his back, and walk up with his hat on backwards and a T-shirt. I mean, that's just the way he is. Yeah. And I think on the big stage, he's Garth Brooks. Here, he's Garth.
Yeah.
And he loves to be here and has been so, incredibly generous and gracious.
Does he still live here in Nashville?
He does.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
He's moved back after his kids graduated.
Where did he live before that? I don't know.
He was in Oklahoma while his kids were in school.
Very cool. So, do you do a lot of stuff on social media? And is that something that, I mean, right now it's almost like any promotional effort you could do, right? You're kind of doing like, you can't do any more in terms of serving because you're full every night, 7 nights a week. On 2 seatings.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where the merch becomes like the big driver for you, right? And do you do a lot of, go ahead.
Well, the merchandise, and we also do private events, which help our budget and offer a lot of times folks the chance to come here and actually have a conversation with the writers. So some of our corporate events will be like 2 or 3 writers with a Q&A. And so in that way, especially for like team building and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for people to really get close to understanding how the music business works, particularly here in Nashville.
And you have 2 different types of events. So there's some events that are the stage, right? We're sitting right next to it right now. And then to our other side right here, there are 4 chairs for what's going to happen tonight. Tell me more about that. What is that?
This is our In the Round setup, and it was designed by a couple of writers, Fred Knobloch and Don Schlitz. Don Schlitz, who wrote The Gambler. And they decided that they didn't want people talking as much. So they thought if they set up in the middle of the room, people would be quiet because they're right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this group of 4 writers, sidebar is we don't book the club the way that most clubs are booked. So in these shows, I'll be like, I'll talk to maybe Danny Flowers, who wrote Tulsa Time. And he'll say, well, can I get a show on a Saturday night? Be like, yeah, what about this? And then he goes and gets the other people so that the shows are not me or the other booker just putting random people together. And I think that's reflective of the Nashville community too, because there are people write together, they live together, they've bared their souls to each other, and that's what comes out when they take turns with these songs. They know each other's songs, they sing on them, and they know the stories behind them, and can kind of tell that, and so you get an experience that is not an artist removed from an audience member. It's like everybody's in it.
Yeah, and I just noticed also the chairs are sponsored.
They are.
So tell me
that
more
was
about
television show when we really needed to
you
make
were
some
trying
money.
to figure it out in however you could. So that's
Yes.
really interesting, because a lot of businesses I talk to, they're doing it for love of the game. They're not necessarily making a lot of money, and they're in that situation. And you were fortunate to have this kind of big break where it made a big difference for you.
Yes, that is true.
What kept you going through those times? Like, what psychologically? There were probably days we were sitting behind that bar being like, what am I even doing here? So what kept you going?
Well, the experience of what happens here.
Yeah.
We've had staff people that have come and gone, and they will go when they don't come here.
Right.
If I have people in the office, or if they don't care about what's happening here in the room with the music, then it's an empty experience. But when they do care, it can be life-changing. If I still can't listen to Tom Douglas play The House That Built Me without crying, and if I'm in the room, he won't let me be anywhere in proximity with him because he knows I'm going to cry, and then he cries. So there's something about that experience that I think keeps everybody going. And people, Martha's been here 20 years bartending. Elliot, our manager, has been here 27 years.
Wow.
And that, back to your question about what separates the Bluebird from some other places and makes it unique, is, the writers come in the back door and they hug everybody in here because they're family.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen everywhere. It happens at some places in Austin, I'm sure, because there's that community feel. But that builds like an energy that I think when I see the staff hugging the writers or laughing together or, avoiding each other and smiling, I know the customers see that too.
Yep.
And they know that they're in a place where people aren't snapping at each other, where people are enjoying being together.
Yeah.
And it reflects on the overall experience.
Yeah.
So
I
don't know if I answered your question.
No, that makes sense. I think the certainly your customers do see it. You would think you're selling new iPhones out here, because every night there's like a line out the door of people trying to get in here, right?
Yes, there is often a line, and sometimes if we have Charles Eston here, people will sit out front from 8 o'clock in the morning until the doors open at 9 o'clock at night. Their poor things are atrophied. We have to put dry ice on them.
Wow.
But
That's wild.
that's
a crazy
it's
story.
a responsibility, though.
Yeah.
And you see these people, and they've come from all over the world to come here. And you want to make sure that they have an experience that, justifies that commitment that they've made.
Yeah. What are some of the crazier things you've ever seen here? You were talking about people lining up since 8 a.m. That's pretty crazy, but I'm sure you've seen some things.
Well, people eating chicken on the steps in front and just leaving their bones there. That's crazy. It's like, have you no manners? We do... Periodically, we will do a show here called Writers at the Bar.
Oh.
And those last 3 stools there, we flip the room. Mm-hmm. And Don Schlitz, Fred Knobloch, and Vince Gill will sit in those stools and play to the room backwards.
Yeah.
And that's always fun.
That gets a little rowdy.
Yeah. Well, and Vince is so funny. I remember him sitting there on the end looking at the pictures on the wall and just going, it's the only place in town where all my wives have their picture on the wall.
I'm not sure if you're joking, but that's pretty funny.
No, it's true.
As long as he wasn't, maybe he was married to Chris Christopherson. I just didn't know.
Well, he wasn't married to everybody on the wall, but everybody he was married to is on the wall.
I know, I'm joking. I know.
But Chris Christopherson here, pretty amazing.
Oh,
Dave Grohl.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And it's sometimes you probably don't know who's going to show up, right?
You don't know.
Yeah.
Cher came one day. Somebody kept the straw that she had her Coke,
That's wild. What is the number one piece so a lot of our audience are people who are either small business owners or people who are thinking about starting a small business. What is the number one piece of advice that you would give them, given that, you have so much experience here?
I think it's two things. One is pay attention to what you're doing. And alongside of that is like what we do and what we did the whole time that all of this sort of onslaught was happening to us is continue to ask ourselves what our job is.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, there are songwriter places all over, and some of the staff will be coming. They'll be like, "Oh my God, so-and-so's got a songwriter night." And you look at that and you're just like, that's awesome. But all we can do is this. And what does it mean to do this? And with the television show and all of that interest and so many people wanting to have a piece of the Bluebird, it's a continual thing where we're saying, this is who we are. This is what we do. We always have an open mic. We always have Sunday Writers Night. We could put hit songwriters every single show, but we don't. It is our job to be that place where people can kind of be bad.
Right.
And people will say to me, they're like, there's always a great show at the Bluebird. That's not true. Sometimes there's not a good show. Sometimes that show is somebody getting their sea legs. And the only way that they can learn how to, I mean, you know if your song's working or not when you're sitting in the middle of this room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how people become better writers and better performers and just better in their relationships.
Yeah.
And so asking ourselves that, or are we doing what we're supposed to do, is really important.
And it's a commitment to a mission, because you also don't do, as far as I know, actually, I don't know, do you do band shows with like drums and bass and stuff?
We do. Fred Eaglesmith, people like that who come want to play in a room like this where they can be close to people. We do a Sunday Spotlight, which is the show before the Sunday Writers' Night. It's an hour-long set.
Mm-hmm.
That's a plugged-in set every week. So we do that. It's not our normal thing. I mean, Monday nights we have Mike Henderson's blues band, and Mike's been playing here since I was bartending here.
Wow.
So 30-odd years.
But still with a commitment to original songs.
Yes.
Like 100%. There's no...
And I will say...
No Mustang Sally.
No. Mike Henderson does definitely not adhere to the shush policy. He is a blues guitar player. Joe Bonamassa has been here playing with him. He's that guy.
Actually, I think Joe Bonamassa is playing the Ryman's.
I think he is, too.
Yeah. Does he live in town here?
No. Well, you know what? He was engaged to a woman here. He may have a place here.
Okay.
I think he may have a place here.
Okay, very cool.
I can't keep up with him.
Oh, with all of them? Yeah, there you go. And you're saying that you used to be kind of the only game in town when it comes to this. Now there's a lot more.
Yes.
Now that probably strengthens your position, not weakens it, right? Because it makes you a part of a bigger community, and you're the original one. Or how do you see it?
Well, I have heard that some other places feel competitive with us, but I don't feel competitive.
Yeah.
I feel like the more songwriters get heard, the better off. Like you say, the better off for all of us, because it really speaks to, people getting a sense of who's creating their music.
That's awesome.
And that's important.
That's awesome. Now, where can people find you? If people are visiting Nashville, what is the process through which, actually for both songwriters and for the general public, what is the process through which people, if they're interested in coming here, they have to go through?
They have to book on the web. Okay. Or, they can, the best thing to do is to book on the,
if you're part of
our website.
Yeah.
Yes. And that happens usually about a week ahead of time, but on the website you can see any show you want to see when it goes on sale. We always have walk-ups too, because we don't take money in advance typically. And so if somebody's only paid like a couple bucks for a reservation fee, oftentimes they'll get stuck at Tootsie's and be having a great time dancing or whatever, and just be like, no, we're not going. And so we always have a walk-up line, because there's always a chance.
In the church pews, you cannot reserve. So the church
you can
pews
reserve
in the corner,
them on the late show.
Oh, you can reserve them on the late show. Okay.
The late show, because for the early show, people they don't mind waiting in line a little bit longer to get those available seats. But for the late show, you don't want to be in line from like 7:30 and waste your whole night and not get in.
Yeah.
So we tried to make it possible where people could really reserve almost all the room.
And if somebody's a songwriter, there's basically two tracks, right? One is if you live in Nashville, and one if you don't.
Well, the open mic can be anybody.
Okay.
So signing up for that, like we talked about, and all that's on the website too. The Sunday Writers' Night, which is a night where people are auditioned. We do auditions 4 times a year. Those auditions are open to people that live within 100 miles of Nashville, or people who are members of the Songwriters Association. And that was something that Amy devised eons ago,
Yeah.
because she felt like if you were paying attention to your career, whether you lived here or not, if you were considering yourself on the professional track, then you were eligible to audition.
Okay.
So we do.
So people could live in Vancouver, Canada, and be a part of
That's right.
the society.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
right.
it's just a show of commitment. In
That's
other
right.
words.
That's exactly right. It's a show of commitment so that
Yeah.
people really are taking it seriously. So we audition 65 people on a Sunday,
Yeah.
4 times a year, and everybody plays a minute of a song
Wow.
for our panel of
That's
judges.
right. So tell me before we sign off. Like that's a really interesting because I remember you said and I won't steal your line, but you said a really interesting reason why you only play a minute of a song, which is what?
That's how long it takes before you decide you don't want to listen to the song anymore
Like if it
and
comes on
change
the
the radio
radio.
station. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
So you got to hook people, and we tell people that's like, don't play your long intro, because that doesn't get anybody. Get right into a song and make somebody care.
Get right into something, make somebody care. That's probably true for your business too. I love it.
Yeah,
And
that's a
if people-
synopsis.
If people are interested in your merch, so you have a lot of great merch. You obviously put a lot of thought into this. They can either show up here, and what's your address here again?
It's 4104 Hillsborough Pike,
And
Nashville, 7C.
there you go. And they can also come to and buy your merchandise on your website. Right?
Yes.
And you will ship worldwide.
Well, we do that through the Grand Ole Opry. They handle all of our fulfillment because we just couldn't handle it.
Got
so.
it. Yeah, too many T-shirts.
Too much interest.
There you go. Erika, thank you so much
Thank you.
for being a
I
guest on Small
appreciate it.
Business War Stories, and I look forward to staying in touch and continue to celebrate your success.
Thank you very much for having me.
Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.